You weren't ready for this one. Dave Ramsey teamed up with Donald Trump for one of the most important conversations of our time, and it's about the life of everyday Americans under a tidal wave of inflation. I think Trump went a layer deeper into the actual policies he plans to enact, which is why it's a perfect place for us to explore what that could mean for the country. Now, this is not financial advice, but take a moment to look at what he said before I tell you more about it.
They're not concerned with a lot of things, but they are concerned with $8 eggs, $5 gas, 7% interest rates, and a house they can't afford with wages not going up as fast as house prices. This inflation thing's a big deal. So in the first 90 days, the strokes that you make to change the economy when you're elected are a big deal. What's the first things you're going to do on that?
Well, in terms of inflation, you're right. And it's almost inflation over the economy, if you want to really know, because people are getting wiped out like never before. I think it's the highest inflation we've ever had. They say it's the highest in 48 years. I think it's the highest ever. There's never been any mess like this, and it's because of what they did with energy. Also, then they topped it with spending with money, that trillions and trillions of dollars that they didn't need, that's being just wasted. But the first thing you have to do is get the energy down. If you get the energy down, other things are going to follow. You want to get the interest rates down, too. And interestingly, even interest rates are going to follow energy, because it's going to take that burden off the shoulders of the economy and off the shoulders of inflation itself. And we are going to drill at a level that you haven't seen since, let's say, 4 or 5 years ago.
Now, there's quite a few factors after Donald Trump left office that I want to keep track of. I think 2020 will be remembered as a transitional period in history, not just with the long-lasting impact of the pandemic, but also the breakdown of the global order into chaos. And every single one of those factors that I'm about to lay out have directly stolen the purchasing power of the everyday American average citizen. For one, here's a graph of the country's retail electricity cost in the last 4 years. It has gone from 10 cents per kilowatt hour back in 2020 to now 13 cents per kilowatt hour. That's more than 30% rise in electricity prices for the American consumer. And then came a massive war in Eastern Europe that disrupted supply chains and shipping routes, creating a wave of inflation for the whole world in 2022. But there's an even more damaging factor on top of all this, which is the fall of real purchasing power of your money in the last 4 years. The total money supply in the country has gone from over $15 trillion to the start of 2022 to $21 trillion today. That's also nearly a 30% increase in the total money supply in the system, reducing the value of your dollar, even if you did nothing with them. But economics of this kind is often cruel in the sense that it's really difficult to turn things back. It's difficult to reverse the inflation that has already happened, and it's difficult to get money out of circulation once it's already printed. That's why I think Donald Trump's plan about the one thing that can be controlled is so important, and that is energy.
If you remember, when you go back to the beginning of this really failed administration that we're in right now, what they did was they turned off the energy. They turned off everything that I had built.
So you turned back on the Keystone. You're going to turn back on the drill baby drill line and the
it's drill baby
in your
drill.
Acceptance speech at the convention.
Sure. It says it all. You know, I'd like to use another line, but there's no line that's better. And we're going to drill baby drill. But the fact that they turned it off, and then the energy, if you look back at the very initial period of their administration, the numbers started going through the roof, the energy numbers. Inflation was good. And then they went back to Trump, where they're trying to equal it, and it kept it bad as opposed to horrific. And it's been really bad, and the energy has been very expensive, but nothing like it could have been. So they went back to Trump-type things. But we would have been now 3 to 4 times more. We would have been dominating the entire world on energy. We have more than anybody else, as you've heard me say, but as you also know.
Right.
We have, I call it liquid gold. We have more liquid gold under our feet than anybody else, actually by far. We would have dominated. We would have been taking care of Europe. We would have been taking care of Asia. We would have been taking care, Anwar in Alaska is the biggest find anywhere in the world. It could be as big as Saudi Arabia. And I got it. Ronald Reagan couldn't get it. Nobody could get it. I got it. It was done, ready to start. And when these people came in, they turned it off. They terminated it.
Remember, energy isn't a currency, it's a commodity. It's difficult to produce, but increasing production flattens the supply-demand curve and brings down the price. It's a simple function of economics, but there have been several roadblocks on the way to cheaper energy for Americans, because a lot of that can entail significant investment or risk in the short term. For example, one of the first actions that Joe Biden took after assuming office was to cancel the Keystone XL pipeline project that would have transported cheap oil from Canada's southern regions down to American refineries. It's one of many projects that we're shelved after pushing from environmentalist groups, and the country found out in the next 3 years how critical energy dependence is for a country like America, and for someone like Donald Trump, overregulation is what stands in the way of plentiful energy production for our country.
I don't know if people realize that 10 to 15% of the entire economy is energy,
right,
and it weaves its tentacles through everything else. So $5 gas affects the bread truck who's delivering the bread, and that affects the cost of the bread then. And so getting that plentiful changes everything.
So I have a little thing that I've been saying lately because I think it's easily achievable. We pay very high energy costs, and especially now, but we're paying very, very high. I believe I'll be able to get energy down to 50% of what it is right now within a period of less than a year.
Wow.
That's pretty good. It's going to happen fast, okay? It's going to happen fast.
Well, what are you going to do to do that? What causes that?
They're going to drill. They're going to frack. They're going to do things that they have tremendous additional...
So taking the regs off. Taking the regulations off.
We have to. They put them back on. They put regulations back on. That areas that have no environmental real meaning, they don't let them drill. They're taking leases away, government leases that you're hearing about. I think we can get energy costs down to half of what they. If we do that,
that's pretty dramatic.
Everything, all of those inflated prices are going to come down with it.
Now, a 50% reduction in prices is certainly a tall order, but the truth is that even if energy prices could be brought down by 10 or 15%, you're going to see a reverberating impact across the economy, and that's going to reduce the pace of inflation. Right now, inflation has certainly cooled in the last few years, especially if you look at the major spikes on this chart around 2022. It went from a high of over 9% to now around 2.5%, but the problem with inflation that a lot of people don't understand is that it's cumulative. A lower inflation rate doesn't mean prices are coming down. It just means that they're rising a bit slower than before. And that means to give people back their purchasing power is one of the most important ways to jog the economy after giving them cheap energy. That's why Donald Trump's plan to cut taxes from small businesses fits neatly into the plan for reinvigoration of the middle class and working class.
I personally have experienced the Laffer curve that lower taxes causes increased revenues to the federal government because it heats up the economy. And I'm a small business guy. When you lower my taxes, it doesn't mean I put it in my pocket. It means I hire people.
Right. What we're doing is sort of a two-phase. Number one, I took taxes from 39% to 21%. You know that better than anyone. It's the largest tax cuts in the history of our country. And that was great. That's why we became so successful.
It's funny. You think we can do that again?
Yeah, I think we can go lower. And I'll tell you what I'm doing. I'm bringing it from 21 to 15, but you have to manufacture your product here. And then you pay 15%. And then I'm going to put tariffs on countries so they can't come in and steal our business.
It is certainly a more holistic economic revival plan that we've seen, especially in the absence of such a deep dive into policy from Kamala Harris in a long-form conversation like this. The economy is going to be one of the most decisive factors for how this next election turns out, and that means people need a good enough reason to go out there and vote. Let me know if you think Donald Trump can potentially pull off this economic revival plan of lower taxes, deregulation, and cheaper energy, because everyday Americans will certainly be enchanted by the promises being made by politicians before the election.